My name is Amilcar Peter Sanatan. Today I will discuss a decolonial and feminist approach to understanding state machinery through institutional ethnography from my graduate studies research project on the intersections of gender and geography in East Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. It will be the other PowerPoint on that same email thread. No problem. So institutional ethnography can be useful methodology, to understand the Caribbean state. It understands the intimate workings, rules, and processes of institutions. It considers care practices, community building and participation, and the proximate relations of the state with people. I believe this is an appropriate methodology for small island, developing nation states, and post-colonial societies. Thank you very much. So in June 2020, social unrest and public demonstrations in East Port of Spain, the residents brought greater attention to some of those social and economic needs in the community. The Prime Minister of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago established the Community Recovery Committee to assess the conditions of the community and advance recommendations on line items for ministries to coordinate and deliver in an interministerial fashion. So this helps us understand the way that technocratic knowledge is produced in the state around urban governance in the Caribbean. Notably, 10 members of that committee, right, of the 10 members who comprise the committee, 7 were men and 3 were women. The gendered composition of the committee was not incidental, but rather it was connected to larger masculinist processes where macro-level urban planning and governance are designed and led by men. But it also conceptualizes spaces in urban communities where there's conflict than to structure it, to discipline boys, to provide resources for the boys and assimilate the perceived deviant males into the mainstream of society. And I'm trying to probe the idea that discourses about the status of males influence committee compositions and the aesthetics and design of public spaces, such as the Jabera Avenue multipurpose court that emphasizes Black male iconography in its aesthetic. These are the ways that I would like to connect the dots and discourses of my research project, looking at the macro and the micro developments that illustrate the state, social, and gender relations of power. Now, there are formal maps in Trinidad and Tobago, like Jamaica, Belize, Guyana, Suriname, but these also demarcate the boundaries of communities, like some in East Port of Spain, but they are also geographic imaginaries by residents that influence the mobility and go on to influence the flow of state resources that literally map communities. In SALISES, there's SALISES East, SALISES West. In Beetham, there are phases 1 through 5, each phase with their own settlement pattern, community leadership, and sense of order. On George Street, there's Upper George Street and Lower George Street. As one resident on his stool explained in the midst of a petition for basic needs, he said, up here is life, and down there is bullets and death. The late activist and theatre practitioner Hal Greaves once said, how could you talk about community development when one street has 2 communities? And these are some of the divisions that take on specific significance in some communities that have pledged to either, as we call them, Rasta City or Muslim City, which are the 2 large affiliations for gang formations in Trinidad and Tobago. But this imaginary map that resides in the heads of residents, is it real? Of course it is. State-run social programs like construction projects are impacted by these logics. For example, in one construction training program targeting residents, the local training center cannot be used because of an ongoing conflict between 2 communities. So the state has to reassess the program and bus people out to neutral locations further out, which costs more money in order to facilitate the successful completion of the program and reduce attrition. Notably, women also express greater mobility walking in and around communities. Young men, however, are victimized for moving through enemy territory or border lines. These imaginaries impact program uptake and social programs. They are not possible without the continuous attention to these social geographies with the inputs of residents and workers. So I'm talking about walking as being central to institutional ethnography and the way that we do the state. So I know it's kind of like funny business, right? I'm saying let us understand government by putting on safety boots and walking through communities. And this is what happens when you walk. You walk through Phase 5 in Beetham Gardens and navigate the galvanized corridors that occupy the popular imagination, similar to zinc fences and seen in popular Jamaican dancehall videos, Shabba Madapat. And while walking, I saw the inventiveness and the hazards, electricity lines drawn from cords along the ground, broken tiles and bricks that provide a surface for tracks, hibiscus flowers overstretching from one neighbor's yard to the next. We meet the pieman, 3 women braiding hair in the shade, seated on plastic chairs, bare-chested boys practicing backflips on the boom. These are some of the houses in Beetham Gardens Phase 5. This is the hibiscus. So in Maplan's Lavantil, in Maplan, we understand the steep climb of people and their cars heading up the hill. One of the beneficiaries of the state-run latrine eradication program scolded her son as we made our way up the staircase to our house. The young boy, no older than 5, used the toilet, but there was no water for the past 3 days. So they have pit latrines. The state builds toilets as part of a sanitation program, but they still don't have access to water. So it's like a concrete latrine. No, it's not. It's a toilet, but they have other exclusions in their life. She apologized for the mess the child made, and she informed us that envy in the community caused her roof to blow off during the heavy rains in October. She placed bottles, you might be able to see it here, bottles of blue, which is mixed with water on the corners of her blue soap to end bad mind and prevent her roof from flying away again. The collective we I refer to here a team of workers I joined with project coordinators, health and safety officer, community liaisons who do field work when we operate for the state. So this is part of a larger practice of feminist ethnography. Not every public worker in government is a feminist ethnographer. I happen to be doing research work while I work in the state. And my sensitivity to the people and environment of the research process is informed by feminism, and subsequently I would give a definition of feminist ethnography because I'd like to focus on a particular scholar. The main approach in my study is institutional ethnography. Institutional ethnography is rooted in feminist methodologies. Ethnographic studies have traditionally centered their inquiry on the ways people in a local scale or their everyday activity construct and articulate meanings and make sense of themselves and their places. However, social life is not only constituted by individuals' rendering of events, it is governed by broader institutional power. So for Dorothy Smith, rest in peace, institutional ethnography involves 3 components. 1, the study of ideology and ideological practices. 2, the study of the production of labor and work activities. And 3, the study of local organizations and their connections to a broader set of social relations. The standpoint of Dorothy Smith is that of a Marxist feminist scholar. Most importantly, this approach to ethnography shows the relationship between individual experiences and institutional ruling processes and practices of power. In relation to my project, I examine how these institutional processes and forms of ruling are themselves gendered. For example, my time was divided among 5 work responsibilities. I would have administration, emails and telephone calls, project coordination, liaising with program participants and service providers, attending departmental and staff meetings, site visits, and community engagement. These are forms of which we understand as knowledge production. And in institutional ethnography allows us to look at the processes of work to begin to understand the mechanics of the state. While email responses generally have a response rate of 3 to 5 days among government agencies, most residents with whom I engage with either do not have an email address, nor do they feel confident responding to formal correspondence this way. Thus, I have to spend significant time calling people, answering phone calls for efficient communication. A female project coordinator from an agency in another ministry contacted me in 2021, and their conversation completed, they were looking at the programs that we had in East Port of Spain, and it was quite interesting. So this is a supporting ministry that is doing work in the same community that we have our operations. They said, Mr. Sanatan, let's be real. Our research tells us that 80% of the households are led by women. I think it's 90%. We don't want them to sit at home and wait for a man and give them a little change for money. We need to do this work. We need to make sure we take care of their children, and we don't want them to have their sexuality, economic dependence, and women waiting on money for a man. There's so many single mothers here. These are some of the inherent gender biases, right, that we begin to have public workers in the state, right, organizing programs to serve people who need the most. again, institutional ethnography through the analysis, which is used in autoethnography to take notes of the discourses communicated in professional phone calls ethically, gives us insight into the prejudices that workers may have, which impact the outcomes of state programs. So institutional ethnography involves interviews, archival research, and participant observation. These methods help observe the crucial workings of institutions. More importantly, it's an important politics of research for studying up. The practice of studying up emerged from Lauren Nader's call for anthropological researchers to be urgent in studying understudied institutions with power and responsibility, and that is why I focus on the state. I'll begin because I'm coming to the close of my presentation. This is a baby goat, you know, me with my boots here. And what brought me to wearing this $1,600 safety boot is to call me Rasta cowboy sometimes. You have to wear a guayabera, a shirt jack, or a bush jacket in Jamaica. I don't know what you call it, and you do it. And these are all the deliberate aesthetic practices one had to construct to do work in under-resourced, high-conflict communities to show that you are a worker, that you come in peace, and that you could navigate enemy borderlines as seamlessly as possible. And that happens through walking in and out. I draw from my namesake, Amilcar Cabral, to discuss its implications for research methodology. He was a liberation fighter in the then Portuguese colonized Guinea-Bissau. And in a 1969 lecture, Cabral asserted, another question we can proceed to discuss is the following principle of our party. We advance towards the struggle, secure in the reality of our land, with our feet planted on the ground. And I'm trying to say that walking is a form of knowledge-making practices. It's a peripatetic practice that produces knowledge, which I think complicates what Dorothy Smith was doing from institutional ethnography. So I hope that my work on decolonizing is not decolonizing Dorothy Smith. It is building on that great tradition Dorothy Smith established, looking at Canadian institutions. And I am saying through autoethnography, peripatetic practices, we begin to have certain insights about race, class, and gender, even if it is engaging participants and they're telling me, get out the sun, and I'm like, why? They said, we don't want to get you too black. I said, I'm black, but you're like, not black like me. So these are the ways that color is organized and communities construct difference and inside and outside status. So in conclusion, there are multiple rationalities of the state, what happens at the high level and lower level apparatus of the state. Dorothy Smith's pioneering work has value for the study of the Caribbean state, including autoethnography, framing the institution within the wider community, and not just the institution as the workplace, and including analyses on the intersections of gender, class, ethnicity, and I would go as far as ability. Based on my photographs, it requires a certain physical ability to navigate these landscapes. There are immense possibilities for Caribbean researchers with institutional ethnography, and I am open to engaging further issues in the question and answer segment. Thank you.